Join the voice of the Vikings, Paul Allen. Hey, I know that guy. Out at Hy-Vee in Lakeville on Tuesday, August 6th. Stop by from 4 to 5 p.m. to meet PA and Vikings defensive tackle Harrison Phillips. Thanks to Hy-Vee and Pepsi, plus a live Q&A event to follow. Get the full details now at KFAN.com. Keyword calendar.
And speaking of the name Harrison, what about Harrison Smith and HOF? If this indeed is Harrison Smith's final year, it's something about which we'll begin thinking. And good morning.
Harrison Smith earlier this week confirmed he intends this to be his last season. So I think that sounds right? Yep.
I mean, I missed that. My bad.
I think this is it. Shoe in for the Vikings Ring of Honor, right? I mean, that to me is an automatic, and it could be as far as I'm. I know there's some period of some cooling off period or whatever, but it's 100% for him.
What about Greenway in the old Ring of Honor?
I think
one of the leading tacklers in the history of the team.
Yeah, in the conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make him sweat it out a little bit.
But is Harris?
He might be in the nipple Ring of Honor.
is I don't even know what that means.
Sorry.
He seems like an unlikely candidate for a nipple ring.
Yeah.
Do you remember David Boston?
Mm-hmm.
So David Boston,
that was
big
a monster
nipple ring
right
guy.
there.
Yeah, that guy was gigantic.
Yeah.
But he had his nipples pierced, and he complained at one point during training camp that the defenders got to stop getting their hands on him around the nipples because they're pulling the rings out. And I'm like, dude,
come on, man.
Put some duct tape over those things.
They're just two quick asides to that. Like accessories and during the course of games.
Yeah.
Chris Gamble lost a $25,000 necklace, part of a necklace on the field, and I'm not sure if they ever found it. He had his chain pulled off. He kept saying to somebody after the games, they broke my chain. I just kept hearing it. I didn't understand what he was talking about, but he lost a chain during the game, and I don't think he ever found it. It was like 25 grand.
The grounds crew after the game.
Yeah, right.
Jackpot.
Well, that's a hell of a bonus right there.
Yeah, it is.
Edger and James with the hair. Well, it's you could grab the hair and pull him down. It wasn't a hair collar tackle,
right?
And somebody pulled one of his dreads out.
Oh.
I mean, like right out of his head. It wasn't the fake stuff. It came right out of his head.
Now, A, that's got to sting.
Hey.
B, what do you think you could eBay that for? Edger's lock of hair. That's right. I got Edger's dreads.
Well, I think it was Dez Bryant or somebody. There's got to be a photo out there. I think it was Dez. He lost one of his earrings.
Yeah.
And the earrings were, like you said,
25 grand.
50.
I remember that.
And there's like a picture of him still wearing his football pants, like a member of PR out on the field trying to find it.
Right.
He thinks he lost it in the red zone somewhere. Good freaking luck with that.
Oh man.
Lay out the Harry the Hitman intel so we can chew on it.
It's going to be, we're going to use comps at the safety position, recent comps, other players who've gotten it. Now, safeties don't get in very often. I don't know this for a fact, but I'm guessing safety, center, guard might be your three least. So I pulled the most two recent safeties to get in, and it's been a while.
Yeah.
Troy Polamalu and Ed Reed.
Yeah.
So let's look at their numbers and compare to Harrison Smith and see if we think he can get in. Let's start with interceptions as one of the measures for sure for Harrison Smith to get into the Hall of Fame. Harrison Smith had 34 interceptions. He'll get a few more this year. Maybe he lands at 36, 37, 38. Troy Polamalu had 32.
Hey.
So less.
Yep.
Ed Reed, 64 interceptions in Ed Reed's career.
Holy cow.
Double. That is staggering for Ed Reed.
You want to talk about going cowboy? I mean, is he not he's the epitome of that, right? Like he's
Polamalu?
Whether it's Polamalu and it's Ed Reed, just out there playing center field.
Free safety.
I see this. He puts the free in free. There's he's all over the freaking place. Polamalu was going rogue a lot too.
Reed to me is like, you mentioned center fielder, like the ultimate center field safety. So was, by the way, again, Harrison Smith had 34, Ed Reed 64. Remember how many Paul Krause had? How many picks
81.
Paul Krause had? 80 freaking one.
Wow.
Insane. Get this. And I had forgotten this little detail from Paul Krause's career.
Yeah.
As a rookie, he had an interception in 7 straight games.
Yeah.
That's insane.
14-game seasons.
And he played all 14 game seasons, and Paul Kraut said 81. Now, I think back then you could mug the receivers a little bit more. I think the defense had a little more, but still, 81's insane. That might be a totally unbreakable number.
It is.
All right. So next for Harrison Smith, let's look at total tackles.
Okay, you got sacks in there too.
I'll get to sacks in just a second.
Has a bunch of sacks.
He does. We'll talk about that.
5 pick sixes.
Do you want solo or do you want combo tackles as your metric? Solo tackles. Harrison Smith, 766 solo tackles. 766. Ed Reed, almost 200 fewer, more than 200 fewer, 507. And Troy Polamalu, 583. So Smith's already well ahead.
Would have more.
I did too, because it was very physical, played near the line of scrimmage a lot. But Smith already leading them by a margin on tackles. Let's get to sacks. Harrison Smith, 19 and a half sacks right now. He'll get a few more this year, maybe finishes in the low 20s. Troy Polamalu, just 12. And Ed Reed, just 6.
Right.
So Harrison Smith's got a wide sack advantage.
Reed, you don't ask the center fielder to come in and play shortstop.
No. But Polamalu played near the line of scrimmage a lot, and I thought his numbers might be better. But what a perfect fit Harrison Smith was for Mike Zimmer and now Brian Flores, because they were willing to let him blitz from the slot a lot. And it was great. And sometimes from the A-gap, for Pete's sake.
But, I mean, maybe this shouldn't count, but we have one glaring omission involving those three. Polamalu and Reed won Super Bowls. Hitman hasn't been to one.
It's a big difference.
So that people, the Pro Football Writers Association and those involved with this, that matters.
They care. 100% it matters.
Do you think, well, I definitely think that matters from a quarterback standpoint. That can't matter as much when we're talking about secondary positions, can we?
Yeah.
That has to change a little bit.
It shouldn't, but it does.
It always does. I saw this. You were talking about difficult to get into the Hall of Fame as a safety. This is from December of 2023, CBS Sports. They're ranking the toughest positions to get into the Hall of Fame. And they note the wide receiver spot's the toughest, and then they list out all the names, right? I mean, we're talking about Andre Johnson. It's tough to play 14 years, get 15,000 receiving yards. Corner. And then they mention all of the names. The third toughest, and this is what they say about safety, is this is a position that has recently opened up over the last few years. Dawkins, Polamalu, Ed Reed, John Lynch, Rondé Barber, Leroy Butler have all entered the Hall of Fame within the past 5 years. And they note significantly opening up a position that had less than 10 Hall of Famers just a decade prior to this. So over the last 5 years, they've seen this massive uptick. So is that how they're playing in the defense?
No, I think they're conceding we've overlooked this too long.
And maybe that's the case.
I think it's been overlooked more so than you're just not good enough.
Well, and so I don't know when this happened. Again, I'm just going off of this article I found. Splitting up the corners and safeties in the voting significantly helped safeties get into the Hall of Fame.
Big time.
That's an excellent sign for the players who have been set on the bubble the past few years.
Yeah, see, I didn't know that they were jumbled, that they were all bunched together.
This is implying that at one point they were, which certainly would then probably favor the corners if you're thinking about picks and things like that. So definitely has been historically super tough, but maybe if we're trying to analyze, if we're throwing arbitrary percentages out in terms of his chances of getting in, the fact that you have seen so many names over the last 5 years, does that help Hitman? In combination with some of those statistics that you put out there.
I think it will ultimately help him. For whatever it's worth, Pro Football Reference has got like a numeric grade on players to get in at their position. And right now they have Harrison Smith just a hair under Hall of Fame. And they're just looking at statistics.
Right.
This season might be the thing that just bumps him over the threshold for whatever that's worth. Let me give you two players that do not belong that are in.
Another thing that you'll the voters and for whomever votes for this, you never hear them talk about this. It's kind of like, don't tell anybody, but I mean, remember Polamalu in the Super Bowl, remember Reed in the Super Bowl. I mean that shouldn't it should be in the mix, but it shouldn't be a big part of the mix in the ultimate team game. But it matters to the old schoolers, those who play for one team all of their career, because they just look at it like there probably were opportunities for you to jump to different places, maybe get more, maybe chase rings, stuff like that. but you were dedicated to this storied franchise all of your career, and like Polamalu, like Reed, and they have respect for that.
Let me give you two players. You were talking about how important it is to get the Super Bowl on your resume. Mm-hmm. Here's two Super Bowl winners that have no business being in the Hall of Fame.
Really?
And I don't wish them any ill will, but they, just numerically, they don't belong here. Joe Namath. Joe Namath was a second-tier quarterback his entire career. Let me give you the stat.
He was an icon. He had the Brute Fabergé commercial with Muhammad Ali.
Why are you going after Broadway Joe?
Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, the fresh smell of Brute, and the punch of Ali.
He gave the AFC their first ever Super Bowl win.
Yeah. As a 21-point dog.
And he
guaranteed a week
win.
ahead.
That's right. And that's all he has going for him statistically.
He was
good,
awful
though.
with the Rams.
Last year.
I think I might have lived out there during that time.
Here's Joe Namath's touchdown to interceptions.
Ooh.
Touchdowns, 173 across 15 years. He was like 12 touchdowns a year. 173 touchdowns.
Yeah.
You ready for interceptions?
Yeah.
220.
Oh, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
He has more interceptions than touchdowns.
Of course, Paul, he must have run for 100 touchdowns, right? No, Joe couldn't run.
No, not at all.
Yeah, Joe ran to Studio 54 after every practice and hung out there with Andy Warhol and the next Marilyn Monroe.
Lynn Swann. Lynn Swann's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
You know how many receptions he has for his career? 336. I mean, think about this.
Yeah.
There are receivers.
And Lynn wasn't super fast.
There are receivers that do 100 a year.
Yeah.
Lynn Swann had 336 career receptions.
Is that Stallworth?
Yep.
That was the Stallworth. And he's in two, and that's another crime, by the way.
How many rings does he have, though? This goes back to the Super Bowl.
All about the rings.
But it's not necessarily the rings with Swann. It was the Superman diving catches in the Super Bowl that he repeatedly made that's ingrained in the last membrane of all these voters.
After John Facenda and the autumn wind is a Raider, you think about Steve Zabel and NFL Films. NFL Films HOF is 9-year-old Nordo on Saturday morning seeing that floating, flipping back all-time catch that Lynn Swann made.
Yeah.
And he's got the rings.
And they all played on artificial turf that looked like concrete. It just looked so hard.
Yes.
And
Rivers.
everything looked cold all the time because you never got to see Dolphins or Chargers games. And Lynn Swann is football immortality.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is, because of the catches he made in Super Bowls to win games.
He had great moments, undoubtedly.
At the biggest times.
So
I'm not saying it's HOF worthy.
Well, how about
There's a difference between HOF worthy and football immortality. Ontario Smith is football immortality. Okay?
So that in Canton?
Yeah, you become...
that would have been your first stop.
You become... Yeah, you're talking about Edger and James Dredd sold on eBay. How about that Whizzinator? How about Ontario Smith's prosthetic penis being sold on eBay? What would that go for?
People pay for that,
What about the third element of it, though, that would talk about Namath and Swann? So you have statistical equity, you have winning equity, and then you have cultural equity.
Yeah.
Because the reason the NFL is what it is today is because of NFL Films and some of those things, and the mythical nature of which they built this up.
Yeah.
And you just think about those grainy 70s videos and breath coming out of helmets and things like that. I mean, this was better than any movie in some respects. The cultural element of it, Joe Namath, everybody knows who Namath is, and that's why he should be in Canton.
Well, should the fridge be in?
Swann, no.
I mean, if he was cultural icon, but he should not be in the Hall of Fame.
But they had fewer teams. It was all different. So therefore, Swann does not get into the Hall of Fame in 2024. So if he completes a 7, 8, 9-year career exactly the way it was, catching passes from whomever, he's probably not a Hall of Famer. But during that time where watching him on ABC on Monday Night Football with Frank Gifford on play-by-play, Howard Cosell, and Dandy Don, I mean, that was immortality at that time. So yes, the moments were elevated, but like Merlin Olsen. I mean, Merlin, I don't know if he's in the Hall of Fame or not. Merlin Olsen was a really good defensive lineman for the Los Angeles Rams. So was Rosie Greer.
Yeah.
But they both made more money and receive more accolades for work they did in movies and television.
Yeah, they shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame.
Merlin Olsen was on Little House on the Prairie.
Yeah.
And he was on it for like years.
Yeah, he could act.
What I mean?
All right, two more things on Lynn Swann. Just
Sweet Little
let me
House
finish
on
this.
the Prairie reference.
How many 1,000-yard seasons did Lynn Swann have? And by the way, they flipped from 14 to 16 games right in the middle of his career.
I'm going to go on a limb and just say none.
Yeah, I'm going to say 1.
0.
Okay.
How many 900-yard receiving seasons did Lynn Swann have?
Feels like there's a vibe here. We're going to go 0.
0.
You know, it's 2024, and you have a cause. Champion it. Get out there. This be the right weekend to get to Canton and try to cancel him.
Yeah.
Go cancel him.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's there for those coming in.
Uh-huh.
Our guy is there to cancel everybody who doesn't belong here.
And there's many who don't, but these two
Lynn
belong.
Swann agenda.
I do have a Lynn Swann agenda. All right, last thing on Lynn Swann, and I'll be done.
Yeah.
Andre Johnson just got in with 15,000 receiving yards. And by the way, barely got in. It was last year of eligibility, the whole bit. Lynn Swann, 5,400 career receiving yards.
Right.
1/3 of what Andre Johnson had. It's a travesty. That's what that is.
What's the point? I forgot what the point was.
The point was Harrison Smith. We want Harrison Smith to get into the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
That's the point.
And I think in fairness, because
it's going to be close.
I adore the Hitman, it's a 50-50.
It is.
You know, and not getting to or playing in a Super Bowl matters.
You were talking about the third component, like, are you an electric figure that everybody knows?
Yeah.
Harrison Smith's the most low-profile guy.
It works against him.
This will work. It will work against his chances to get it.
Because Hitman was blowing up fools left and right every game. Well, then there were some rule changes, and the deciphering in live action, of hits and like penalties and stuff like that. But my man started getting fined about $150,000 a year. He had to pull back on the way he was full throttle hitting people. There was without the overzealous helmet to helmet like Rodney Harrison. Rodney Harrison, I believe, is in the Hall of Fame.
He is not, I don't believe.
He's not. Okay. Well,
I'll check.
You're probably right. Harrison played a lot like Rodney Harrison. Harrison played like Harrison. But then the rules changed and he had to pull back a little bit, and that's where I have just so much respect for Harrison Smith. Because, he can play center field, he's free safety, he's strong safety, he blitzes.
Yeah.
And he blows you up if you let him. Well, then, he's getting fined every other game. So then he Zimmer and whomever, he morphed into a different guy, with more interceptions, more sacks, more tackles, things like that.
Well, let me hit you with this too, because going back, I saw this notable names not in the Hall of Fame, and we've talked about this before. Is Harrison Smith has the first team All-Pro in 2017, and I'm pretty sure he was like second. He's been All-Pro a total of twice. I think there was a second team bid in there. Mm-hmm. But who was getting it? Like the Earl Thomases. Yep. There was always, so part of that personality element under the radar, not under the radar to the league. He's getting fined and stuff. Mm-hmm. But Earl Thomas, Rodney Harrison is not in the Hall of Fame yet. What about Darren Woodson? He's not in. I'd have to go back. I'd have to dig into this one. Lawyer Malloy is another name that pops.
Earl Thomas has HOF to him.
He does.
And so in his era, I think he has kind of lived specifically, and Earl's the name that I'm going for here. I think he kind of lived in Earl's shadow a bit. Do you see that at all?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. The game has changed so much during Harrison's career from a rules standpoint that Earl Thomas, there were other safeties also. It's a pretty good era right now for safeties.
It is a pretty good era.
So, for instance, Earl Thomas, 3 first-team All-Pros and 2 second teams during actually what has ultimately been a shorter career because he got hurt a couple of times and then things fizzled out. He's yelling about wanting to go to Dallas and he hates Pete Carroll, the whole thing.
Who did he play? Did he finish his career with Arizona?
It was Baltimore.
Baltimore is what I remember, yeah.
Okay.
It was like the 18 or 19 season.
Well, who was
Good Lord, 18 or 19?
Who was the former Seahawk who played for Arizona, and they're on a nationally televised game, Thursday, Sunday, or Monday night, and he gets hurt. It's his first season with Arizona after a long run in Seattle, and he was a big name. And he got hurt, and on the cart heading to the tunnel, he's going, Pete, yelling at Pete Carroll.
Oh, no, that
Pete.
was Earl Thomas because he flipped him off.
Yeah.
And I think there was a contract.
I thought it was Arizona.
There was a contract issue, but he was still with Seattle, I thought. But there was a contract issue. He ultimately gets on the field. It may have been at Arizona where it's happening.
And he flipped off Pete Carroll.
Yeah, he flipped off his own coach.
Pete, and then just flipped him off.
Wow.
Yeah,
you
so
never see that.
Yeah, that's
at that point, you better have the ACL because you're not getting on the field again.
It's 10:27. You're listening to the Friday Football Feast from Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center, home to your Minnesota Vikings.
Head over to our contest page and enter for your chance to win a meet and greet photos and a huge Wenzel's Farm prize pack at the upcoming Fabulous Armadillos concert at the Days and Nights Festival in St. Michael. That's KFAN.com, keyword contest to enter.
Welcome back, 9 to noon. Charch, we should be, as home of the Vikings, as fans of the Vikings, we love the Vikings. We are obsessed with Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy, and Sam Darnold favored to start, J.J. in the wings, and we go from there. And we're excited to see J.J. grow, and we're optimistic about Darnold. But I was looking through a couple of things last night because I saw a couple of injuries that other teams are managing at this moment with quarterbacks. And I'm thinking, what are the other precarious spots? So this in our freewheeling vein, I'm gonna hit you with some duos and some bits, and we're gonna talk our way through them.
Got it.
And I'm gonna start with out east. Specifically, the guy that many Vikings fans wanted to draft, and that being Drake May, and now Jacoby Brissett, and just kind of feeling the vibe of what they're saying. And you got new head coach, and he's battling Matthew Judon on the sideline, and they're trying, Brissett's the guy, trying to give Drake May more reps.
Yeah.
Precariousness of that spot, and maybe it's just as simply, is it a better spot, a worse spot? I love our situation in comparison to the third overall pick in Brissett out east.
I like Drake May. I think he's going to do fine. The early return, very early camp, hasn't looked great for him, but who cares? We'll never remember the first week of Drake May's camp career. It won't matter. Jacoby Brissett is a functional quarterback. Yeah. When he was with the Browns 2 years ago.
Yeah, the Calm loves him. Kevin loves him.
Yes, he was the best quarterback they had on roster when but they had to play Deshaun Watson. Then he goes to Washington last year. They tried Sam Howell. They gave him a long run. The kid absorbed 1 billion sacks. It was a bad offense, and they probably should have gone to Jacoby Brissett. And at one point they tried to, but they couldn't do it. And long story, he didn't get a fair shake there. Now he goes to New England. Right now, he's your probable week 1 starter, even though Drake May went with the third overall pick. If the Patriots are playing to win games, Jacoby Brissett's going to give them a better chance of winning games than Drake May will. And right now, there's a good chance, like I said, Jacoby Brissett, your early season starter, at least while they get Drake May up to speed.
Would you play the game based on our conversation earlier of J.J. McCarthy's potential trajectory under Kevin O'Connell versus the opportunity that Drake will have in New England? Would you play that game at all? And I don't anticipate that you've got their entire coaching staff in your mind and all of those things.
Well, I would. I would, because you have a defensive-minded head coach to start. Yep. So there's
Rod Mayo.
Yeah, look at the styles of the coaches. Well, that's going to sway the way of McCarthy, who still has some work to do to become a starter. But then you look at the talent or lack thereof. Drake, there's zero chance I'd put Drake May out there in this current situation with the New England Patriots,
Yeah, the receiver group is thin, to say the least. They spent 2nd and 4th round picks.
KJ might be their best guy. If you look at it, Demario Douglas, Kendrick Bourne, and he's on the PUP list right now. They're dusting off Jalen Reagor, still trying to make that thing work.
He had a kick return touchdown for them last year.
Jalen Polk and then Polk, excuse me. Let me hit you with the Polk, and then Javon Baker.
Javon Baker is your sneaky sleeper out of that group.
Is he?
Yeah, he's a Central Florida kid he's a rookie. He was at Alabama, but that was a deep depth chart, and he decided to go to Central Florida, and then he just dominated the slappies they were playing and just looked like a man among boys. It was, Javon Baker's an interesting cat.
Oh, they got Juju Smith-Schuster out there.
They do. They have the undead corpse of Juju Smith-Schuster. They get their offense. If you're wondering who the offensive coordinator is, it's another Calm connection.
Yeah,
Alex Van Pelt is your offensive coordinator for the Patriots.
Alex Van Pelt. 1-0 in the postseason as a head coach because Kevin got bit.
That's right. You
had to watch a playoff game from his basement, though.
Precarious spot, Pittsburgh. So Russell Wilson gets $30-some million courtesy of the Broncos. They can sign him then for like league minimum. But then you have Justin Fields. And now Russ hasn't necessarily been participating a ton. He's working through something. People are lauding Fields. That seems like a very precarious spot in terms of the quarterback spot in 2024.
So remember Russell Wilson, obviously in Denver last year, and then unbeknownst to us, sometime around Thanksgiving, they told him that he has to rework his deal. They're going to bench him. And he says no, and then there's a month-long battle. Russell Wilson played shockingly well.
Wow.
For a bad team that was trying to actively bench him or take money out of his pocket. And down the stretch, he was maybe one of the 10, 12 best quarterbacks in the league. Russell played well, and nobody was noticing because the Broncos were awful and the whole situation was diseased. And then ultimately, of course, at the very end of the season, he did get benched because they didn't want to have to guarantee his contract. In Pittsburgh, he's going to be just the best passer they've had since Ben Roethlisberger.
Wow.
Because Kenny Pickett's awful. And they had Mitch Trubisky. You know, they're going to come in and he's going to bring
Mason Rudolph,
yes. Russ will bring just veteran competence to a position that has had none. Russ starts.
Okay.
I will be very surprised if Fields ends up being the starter on just merit.
I'd be surprised if they don't use both in games.
They might.
And I'm not talking about a Cade McCown and whomever he cut time with the Bears. It was just dumb. It was like a preseason audition during regular season games. They would split quarters. But there are things you can do with Fields when you catch a defense tired that you can't do with Russ. I mean, I think it's a decent situation.
Does that become, I mean, not true Wildcat because he's a quarterback and he can throw, but does it become bit player where, we're going to devolve into like him?
I don't know.
Like running routes and stuff like that?
Well, I have no idea. I'm spitballing. I'm just saying if you have Russ at this stage of his career and you catch a defense where certain players are tired, and you put Justin in there, and he's fresh, and he cuts loose with a 4-3-4-4, you're in trouble.
Well, look what he did to the Vikings in the home game here last year, where Russ, where it's not Russ
in the second half, when players were tired,
right in the second half was running through us.
He had that 3rd and 17 making plays.
Yes.
No, I'm not trying to bat it down. I'm thinking that Justin Fields, in some ways, got a bad go of it in Chicago.
Yeah,
he did.
And now that they brought in Caleb, they have done nothing but nothing short of everything
they can do to support him
to make this work. And it's first overall pick and all of that, but you're not too far removed from the 14th or 15th overall pick in Fields.
Yeah,
and so
remember remember the one read bit. I mean, he just the no swivel. I mean, he has yet to find his swivel. He does not scan the field. When he tries to scan the field, he holds the ball too long and takes 72 sacks. No, I'm not kidding you.
I know. He does.
So, I mean, there's room
on the card.
There's room for Justin, but it played itself out, man. He's a one-trick guy, a 1.5 read guy, and that's going to hurt him moving forward.
Can't do that in the NFL.
No, they didn't give him any help with those receivers, though.
Yeah, Darnell Mooney should not be your best receiver.
Yeah.
And that's what he had for his whole career there. Luke Getsy, they fired their offensive coordinator. The offensive line was terrible. And all they've done for Caleb Williams is surround him with talent. Keenan Allen, right? Roma Dunze with the 7th pick of the draft.
DJ Moore gets a fat deal. Now he's championing the cause of Keenan Allen, saying we got to pay him too. I mean, these guys just rolling in cash out there.
Did you see how DJ Moore celebrated his $110 million contract?
Somebody pop out of a cake?
Not quite. He bought an 8-piece family meal at Popeyes.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Hitting and sticking like Popeye's fried chicken.
There you go.
That actually sounds pretty good.
I've never
really
had
good.
Popeyes.
I'm not opposed
Is it
to
good?
it.
It's okay.
It's okay. It's just
all right.
okay. Would you rather have KFC?
No, I'd rather hear you talk about car dealerships.
Oh, stop it. Jeez.
So old school AM 1130 Bloomington. Let's go.
I don't know
That's
where-
like Frontenac right
Yeah.
there.
If someone could explain to me where all the KFCs went, because
Got one right by
there's
Canterbury.
one in Shakopee. There's right there near the downtown. I freaking love
Yeah, so do
KFC.
I. So do
It's
I.
so good.
I worked at my first job, 15 years old.
And now you're going to
KFC in
ruin
Prairie.
our adoration for KFC.
No.
By
Okay.
telling us
Absolutely-
what
no.
goes into to something.
Let me tell you what goes into KFC.
Yeah.
Everything's natural. Everything.
Wow.
You know, like when you get the coleslaw,
What's
'cause
with the
it's-
Colonel's secret deal?
the secret recipe? Well,
Yeah.
I don't know the recipe because they don't tell us the recipe. It just came in a
Yeah.
packet,
Giant
a
jugs.
packet of seasoning
Okay.
that you mix in. But you know this about KFC: somebody is getting there in the morning, and they are chopping up cabbage and carrots for the coleslaw. They are rolling out biscuits and making the dough by hand.
KFC
It is
coleslaw,
all. I'm
the
telling
bomb.
you, it is all naturally
Yeah.
fresh made at
Yeah.
KFC. The world has turned against fried chicken because it is fried, I guess.
Oh, no,
But,
not that.
you know, yeah, right. But then we eat French fries and we eat
Yeah.
chicken nuggets and other
I ain't
stuff
eating
too.
fried
but-
chicken, but I'll drink those 12 beers.
Yeah, right. You know, so to me, pick your battles. But I'll
do
tell you
both.
this: it is all natural stuff. at KFC.
Let's continue this quarterback quandary talker Nordo has presented when we return to TCOPC. Yeah, you know it's KFAN. The conclusion of our Friends on Foes series takes place today, where we have used play-by-play voices. Save Courtney Cronin with the Chicago Bears, covers the Bears for ESPN, to preview each and every Minnesota Vikings adversary. J.B. Long is into his ninth season calling L.A. Rams games, and he will join us about 15 minutes from now. And this is the Friday Football Feast with PA and Charch.
Reminder, the Fantasy Football Weekly Training Camp live event coming to Treasure Island August 16th. Myself and the Fantasy Football Weekly crew, you can be there live. It is totally free. Treasure Island, the evening of August 16th, Friday, 7 o'clock is the kickoff for that. We'll do a live version of Fantasy Football Weekly, and then afterwards we'll do some deep dive data that will not be available on the air. So we encourage people to come out. Treasure Island.
2 weeks from today.
2 weeks from today.
And we had a fantasy football training camp, the only one that I've attended that either was invited to attend or attended.
I remember this, Canterbury Park.
Do you remember the situation?
I do. Can I tell you, and then you can tell me if I get it right or wrong?
Well, you got to remember the situation the night before.
I do.
Go ahead.
This is in the preseason, obviously. This is
07.
the year that we drafted Adrian Peterson.
Yes.
And the night before, he had just had his first NFL preseason action against the Jets.
At the Jets.
Yep. And he had at least one long run down the
Yeah.
right side
Yeah.
in which you already saw that the dude was not going to be
Yeah.
normal at all.
The moment I'll never forget from that game, because Adrian was 100 miles per hour every play, preseason, regular, and postseason, is there was a corner for the Jets named David Barrett who attempted to tackle Adrian, thinking it's a preseason game, man. What we doing
Right.
here? And Adrian trucked him for 5 yards on the field, and David wouldn't let go. And Adrian crushed him out of bounds because he wouldn't let go. And then, so I get back late. We get back like, 3, 4 in the morning. And we have fantasy football training camp at Canterbury Park.
Yeah.
At what?
Like 10.
10.
Right.
So I'm there on the panel, and it's my pick. And it comes to me, and I take Adrian Peterson. And, it's not like it was booed or anything, but I probably took him too high, but it was off that moment the night before that we all had seen against the Jets.
Yeah. And you got teased because play-by-play guy took a Viking early.
Homer terrorism.
Right. And of course you turned out to be exactly right.
Right.
And Adrian Peterson the next year was the first player taken in every draft. But every now and again, one in 1,000 guys in the preseason, you go, oh, you already know.
Yeah.
You're like, well, this guy's not normal. He's, this is incredibly special.
Well,
and
you
Adrian
saw
was
that with
guy.
Gronk, right? You had that a few years later where you're like, you guys got to believe me. Rob Gronkowski is that dude, and it's going to happen. And then I think it paid off.
Well, it wasn't his rookie year quite like that, but I was able to predict the blow up year before it happened.
Did you say take him first?
First overall.
Yeah, well, that's antithetical to that's the bit. But what we're talking about now with Adrian, I mean those are days gone by.
Yeah.
Because nobody plays anybody because of the joint practices,
right?
And so you may see it from a rookie, but not a ballyhooed rookie. Like when I read the headline, Marvin Harrison Jr. is probably going to play some preseason reps. I was like, why? I mean, I understand why, and I'm a fan of it, but it just flies in the face of what everybody is doing now.
Sean McVay's ruined the preseason for all of us.
Yep.
I mean, it used to be, I was a preseason game defender for, I don't know, most of the last 30 years.
Yeah.
Because everybody.
But you're back.
So many other people, including ones on this station, were sneering at preseason games. And I was like, your starters would play a quarter in the first game, like 2 quarters in the second game, and maybe 3 quarters in the third game for the dress rehearsal, and then they didn't play the fourth game. Yeah. And I'm like, I want to see the starters. I want to see Adrian Peterson on the field where I could identify something special.
Brett Favre started the 3rd preseason game at Metrodome against Kansas City, and he'd been here 72 hours.
Right, case in point.
You know what I mean?
And then Sean McVay comes along and says, we're not playing any starters for any games. And they rolled right into the regular season and looked perfect. Yeah. They didn't need the warm up. They didn't need the timing. And now nobody starts.
Well, when he did that, it was like 2016 is when he got the job. And they went to the Super Bowl the first year. Yeah, so it's like everybody's like, whoa, look at this model, you know?
Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen the meme with the Grim Reaper, like knocking on the door and all
the doors? Yeah.
Okay, so Joe Namath, Lynn Swan, and now Sean McVay. Who's next?
Jeff Fisher.
Jeff Fisher should be on the list.
Yeah, he's yet to be.
He's long gone down that road. Back to precarious spots, and maybe this is next. The Geno Smith, Sam Howell situation in Seattle is interesting for them because it sounds like Geno's hurt, and Sam Howell getting
yesterday,
and they can't figure it out. Right? Did he have to go to a doctor to?
Well, this is all new. This just came down yesterday. Right. I don't think we know exactly where Geno sits right now. But they I think very wisely got Sam Howell because I'm a Howell apologist.
Yeah, I like him too,
and feel like he got what they did to him last year and the way they used him in Washington was criminal, and there's part of the reason why they blew out the whole coaching staff.
Yeah,
and I think that kid can play, and they've got a functional quarterback if they need to go to Sam Howell.
Sam has some swashbuckler to him that he may need to pull back on a little bit.
Here's why you just need to constantly be refreshing Google/social media. He shouldn't miss any time with his knee and hip injuries.
Yeah, don't let me, with fantasy football training camp in a couple of weeks and leagues popping up all over the place, don't let me forget to bring this up to you, so I'll do it now. DeAndre Hopkins, month and a half, maybe 2.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big one.
Yeah, his start of the season is up in the air. Now
he won't start the season.
They signed Calvin Ridley to the Titans in the offseason. Yeah. So they've got a little more depth there than they had before.
Treylon Burks off injury.
Yeah, at this, you know what?
But as a 3 or a 4.
Yeah.
You know, with Ridley and Hopkins, that's not bad.
Well, they didn't draft him in the first round to be a 3 or a 4, but that's where Treylon Burks is now, I think.
First round pick trade.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Hey. It's that one. It just doesn't look like it's going to come together. And based on the money they gave Calvin Ridley, they don't think it's going to come together either.
One last one for you here. And I know, Devontae Adams is in the mix and you have Jacoby Myers. That's okay. That's not bad. They draft Brock Bowers. They don't take a QB, that being the Raiders, who are now working with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. I think that's as precarious as it gets, as you're trying to at least give Antonio Pierce something to work with now as the head coach. Still got Max Crosby. I mean, he's a defensive head coach, so that's certainly going to be a focus. I think that's as precarious as it gets with those two.
Gardner Minshew can play a little. I mean, the Colts were in the playoff hunt until the last week of the season last year.
They did have a
Gardner Minshew. They had a win-and-in game
against the Texans, actually.
Yeah, Texans are great. Minshew can play, and if they're interested in winning games, and I think they are. Remember the Raiders? We all remember the 3-0 Raider game. Oh. By the way, Raiders are coming to town next week, right? 8 days from now. I need one of you to bank my bet. I want 1,000 to 1 odds on a 3-0 final score. Will you bank it?
1,000 to 1?
Yep. Will you bank it?
Yeah, if you'll bet 1,000.
No, I
What are we talking about here?
I want to put down $1 to win
of course you do.
1,000 from one of you
I ain't
on a
tripping on
3-0 final
1,000
score.
against somebody's dollar. You kidding me? That sucks.
3-0.
Wait, but you're back. You're back with the adoration and excitement for preseason. Because J.J. McCarthy, I think, is going to play a bunch in all these games.
I hope he does.
Well, see, that'd be exciting, right?
That would be exciting.
Well, think about it. I mean, Darnold, I think Darnold should get, 15-ish, 20-ish plays, at least in one of them, maybe at home.
Yeah.
But probably just one of them. Mullins is they know what they have in Nick. It's like Nick doesn't really need to play in these games.
Yeah.
So I'm just envisioning Darnold at one point, McCarthy in all of them, Jaron Hall probably in all of them. They love him, and if he's not going to be here, let him land somewhere else. But if McCarthy's playing like 2.5 quarters in these games, that's going to be fun.
Yeah, that will be reason to watch, without a doubt.
Let's pause, and if you have more quarterback quandaries, we can get into them with Gabe Henderson, who joins us about 11:20. But around the corner, the final layer of Friends on Foes. J.B. Long, Vox for the L.A. Rams, previews an opponent the Vikings have on Thursday Night Football on the road this year, and that's next.